are having to be ex officio mom and dad, and it's created all types of challenges. Last, what I would say that is a challenge, and this is directly because we can't let higher education off the hook either, is that we know that our teachers, our workforce was not prepared for the pandemic. And some might say, who was prepared? But oftentimes a pandemic only tells us who we are rather than the circumstances that we're being confronted with. And what I would say, you would think that we would require every teacher education program, every program in the country, that we're able to deliver the service online. I haven't heard many institutions of higher learning doing some major training or changes in their curriculum to ensure that the new teaching force or counselors or school psychologists are able to deliver those services. So at multiple levels, there's failure. And there's no one particular group that we can blame. We all got to take the blame, and we all have to provide the leadership to ensure that our babies are getting the education that they deserve. Thank you.
Dr. Moore, thank you for laying out a lot of really serious issues and concerns. And to repeat, we also are going to talk about what we think are, recommendations that will have an equitable and justifiable impact. Now, I just thought about this. Since Dr. Moore is in higher education, let me just stick with higher education and ask Dr. Tyson for her thoughts on the issues right now.
Okay, thank you. Oh, all right, thank you. To echo what Dr. Moore said, I think it's really important to sort of lay the foundation. And my grandma used to say, put the hay down where the goats can get it, because if not, then why waste your time? The whole issue for me is really rooted in white supremacy. And we've had some of those conversations before, but I think it's time for us to stop skirting around to just what that really means. For some people, it's about violence. It's about, people in hoods marching in the streets, burning crosses. No, while that may be true in some instances out there still, I don't know for sure. But one thing I do know for sure is that often those who participated in those activities have transformed their participation in other ways. Police uniforms, being a part of a police force, corporate suits, business casual, teaching attire. I mean, it's showing up across every aspect of our lives in ways that is often invisible because we're not looking at it as being white supremacy. So when we look at white supremacy, it's really in all of the policies. It's in the policies that impact everything that touches the educational lives of BIPOC children. And I use that as a term that is emerging in the research and in society. That's Black, Indigenous, people of color, all of those children. Because what we have found is that what you mentioned earlier, Donna, about racialized minorities, being a racialized person, Black, Indigenous, or a person of color, especially in an urban center, the oppressions that you have to deal with related to white supremacy in education is real, and it's across the board. So to really understand this, as I said, we have to look at the policies. And some of the policies that show up as white supremacist, something as simple as not being able to wear your natural hair a particular way. People always asking, what are those examples? Not translating things for non-English speaking families or making it available to them. When we look at COVID, from the very onset of this, as already has been mentioned, when the schools shut their doors and went to remote learning, the inequities that were already there just were exacerbated. There were already communities that did not have access to Wi-Fi. And if they had access to Wi-Fi, they may not have had access to Wi-Fi that had the bandwidth necessary to do the work that's asked. Many of the so-called white collar professionals, they were able to work from home. When we look at many of our BIPOC families, they were considered essential workers, but they're non-medical essential workers. You know, when people talk about standing up for essential workers, they were talking about the nurses, the doctors, even the medical social workers. They weren't talking about the janitors, the people who are working, you know, in custodial jobs, those truck drivers, the supermarket clerks, all of these folks who are working minimum wage jobs as being essential, and they're not being provided for. So they're leaving their children at home, not able to necessarily do that at home learning and support that was necessary. I think James already mentioned the whole idea about Wi-Fi services. I mean, people were talking about, we will provide this, but if you had cable or internet service that had been shut off because of being economically fragile and not able to afford it, you were not afforded any of those opportunities. If you were given one Chromebook for 4 or 5 children in a family, then you weren't able to do your work. If you had parents working at home, I experienced this in my house. I mean, it's like, okay, you're in one part of the house trying to do a Zoom meeting, I'm in another part, and the internet is so slow because everybody in the neighborhood now is online. So we weren't even in many places where it was accessible, able to do the things that we needed to do. I agree with James that we are not necessarily looking at preparing teachers and teacher education programs to meet challenge, not just the pandemic, but just the level of challenge that comes with the ever-growing economically fragile part of our society. And I think that that's something that we need to give some attention to. We can provide some leadership in that, but we also have to flip the script and turn the mirror on ourselves and ask, what are we willing to do to understand how white supremacy operationalizes itself in the academy and our teaching, our pedagogy, our methods, our placements, all of those things will inform us if we're willing to do the work.
All right, thank you, Dr. Tyson. I would like to hear from Dr. Jackson right now.
Thank you. We experienced the inequities that Dr. Tyson and Dr. Moore spoke of in the classroom when we were there face to face. When we let our children go in the hopes that we would see them again in 3 weeks, it became obvious, you know, we sent them out with no instructions, no technology, with the hope that the cable companies and internet providers would give them the internet access that they needed. And once we overcame the hurdle of the technology and put Chromebooks in children's hands, they still didn't have the internet that they needed. Unfortunately, when the libraries closed, our students lost that source of internet access as well, because the libraries have been great with homework help and giving students the safe spaces that they needed, but they had to close because we're in a pandemic. So our students lost that resource as well. So on top of the inequities they faced in face-to-face classroom environments and trying to close gaps and all of the work that we do to bring our students further and to help them grow, they were set back even further without that access to technology. And I'm not sure that the thought was given, you know, that students had parents who still had to go to work, who weren't essential. They didn't receive the financial services that others received. They had to take care of siblings and cousins because families had to come together into a new unit in order to provide the food, the housing, all those things that were in an emergency for them. Things had to change. Students' addresses changed. They no longer had access to email. So we at the school couldn't reach the families. There were a lot of families who didn't realize that the Chromebook distribution had reopened because they didn't have the internet access to check the school district website. So they had no idea. So students were at home empty-handed and without access. So they're being set back even further. In our efforts to try to close that gap, we couldn't reach them. They're not being provided the instruction that's necessary. If students are in need of special ed services, and we can't reach them, they're falling further and further behind. So it wasn't, of course, it wasn't the best of circumstances, but some of the hurdles were just insurmountable. We couldn't get to our kids. Doing things like offering different incentives for them to log on when it's impossible to log on doesn't make a difference. We have a family in my school, there were 7 children with 1 Chromebook, and so they were able to get another one from the elementary school for those kids. And finally, it was just give everybody a Chromebook. These kids want to do the work, but having students go to the parking lot of the school building isn't always the safest way to give them that access that they needed. And families weren't able, if parents have to go to work, they're not able to take their students to the school parking lot to have that internet access. So we let them down in a lot of ways. And even though we were trying to make strides and close those gaps, doing what we could when they were face to face, it became impossible once we couldn't be there with them. We couldn't have that communication, those small groups, that kind of contact that helps students grow. We weren't able to provide that. And with school starting in a few weeks and there's still so many unknowns, I'm not sure how we plan to help students through that growing divide, to give them what they need educationally, on top of trying to establish equity in terms of how teachers see students. Our students aren't like the students that some of our teachers have at home. They don't have the internet access. They don't have the 3 meals a day. They don't have what other people have. They're not middle class. Columbus City School students aren't middle class students, so they don't have the same access that other students have. So we can't look at them through the same lens. We're not other districts. We're not one-to-one. And, the opportunity came that students are, that the district will have an additional 20,000 Chromebooks to offer to students, but we have 50,000 kids. So how are we going to make sure that those same families that didn't have internet access in the spring to know that we were doing a distribution, that they're going to have it now? So there are a lot of what look like insurmountable hurdles that we have to be able to climb in the next couple of weeks so that our students can have a starting point to get the education that we owe them. But how do we do that with so many things standing in our way? And our kids deserve better, and we have to provide better. How do we do that? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, Principal Warfield.
Yeah, just yes to, almost everything. So that everybody just said. So, I'm looking at this right now through 2 different school districts. So one that is an affluent school district that I just left, and then come into Whitehall that is a much more urban setting and a much more diverse. And I think the last couple months, I will just say my eyes have been open to things that I knew existed, and I knew that were challenges that a lot of our students had. But to actually now be a part of it and see it play out, I think is just, it's some of it is just sad. So when I start to think about just that access piece, just the access to devices and Wi-Fi we talked about, but students trying to do their work on phones is not a solution, and it is not a way that kids are going to be successful. Small spaces. So we're talking about multi-family. We're talking about families with multiple children that are in there, and we're trying to get them on Zoom calls or Google or whatever other means that we're trying to use. And in these small spaces, they're supposed to be on screens when there's multiple people that are in rooms. These are things that weren't things that I thought about in the previous place I was at. Childcare. And when I mean childcare, I mean children caring for other children. And how difficult that is when you are trying to work through a lesson or work through a project, when you have to make sure that you're trying to take care of your sister or your brother or who else is in that home with you. Work. Many of our students their parents lost their jobs. So when we went to remote, the remote meant that was, or hybrid or wherever mode we're going to, that meant that's an opportunity for me to try to go make more money to be able to help my family. And I think those are things that when I'm listening to the stories now that are just, I don't think we really truly sometimes understand how difficult this is for some of our families. And then I think about just some of the conversations we had just with our teachers. I mean, and teachers are at the front. I mean, they are at the forefront of this and trying to educate our students in this very extremely difficult time. And I mean, from being and having access to typically having a day where you're on from, I mean, we say contractual time, you're on from 7:50 to 3:30 or 4 o'clock to now, you are just trying to help your students in any way. So we have teachers that are on the phone at 7:20 in the morning and answering emails at 11:30 at night, trying to make sure that their students are successful. This thing it's a challenge, and it's so much more of a challenge. I mean, I think on paper, everybody, I mean, these plans are great and we can pull these things off, but the reality of this is difficult. I didn't even break into the ESL piece. And the ESL piece and having a large population of ESL students, interpreters, having conversations, being able to communicate with those families are challenges that we are addressing right now and we are working on. And I think, and that is across the board. But I will tell you some of the things that I have in the last few months have just been made aware of, or that I am a part of right now, are real challenges for education, real challenges for students, real challenges for superintendents, real challenges for families that I do not think that people have fully grasped. And I think that is when you start to think that that's a choice, that we choose not. Some people choose not to try to grasp these ideas and understand that this is what's actually happening to families, because they don't have to worry about it. And it's happening over there, and it's happening to those kids in that school district, and we don't have to worry about that because things are different for us up here. And I think that this is a challenge that I'm happy I'm in, and I'm accepting it full force. But I will tell you these are things that I'm concerned, and I just want to do what's right for our kids. And I think this is going to be more of a struggle the longer this thing goes. For all of our families. And I think all as educators in here recognize
that. Thank all four of you. I just saw a question in chat pop up. It just popped up. And the person wanted to know, what is ESL? And we're talking about, there are different terms, ESL, LEP. Anyway, these are students whose primary language is not English. They are not yet proficient in English. So different states and districts use different terms, okay? So if you were someplace else, they'd say LEP, limited English proficient. But with that said, I want us to really make sure that we have time to talk about recommendations. But I want to say that there is a theme clearly that undergirds the four speakers. Four plus myself, and that is just not equity. It's also empathy and compassion. And for those teachers who don't share the lived experiences of students who are struggling the most, we have to work harder to help not just those students, but to help those educators. And then that means those educators can better support students. So we all are in this together to do what's necessary for students, what's essential. There's so much more I want to say, but I'd rather hear from our speakers. So I want recommendations, and I know that we want to have questions and answers. So in about 3 minutes, I know that's hard. But in about 3 minutes, can you go ahead and provide some recommendations? And let's continue in order that we started. So Dr. Moore.
Well, I'll be succinct. We need to adapt to the kids rather than expecting the kids to adapt to us. We fail because we never adapted to them. Now, when we think about our large urban systems where I spent most of my career doing work, is that we got to think bold and somewhat radical. Right now, hybrid might not be hybrid, like they at literally coming. We could change the way we do it, since we already trying to do innovation. Why not have some of the kids come to school? We can create sort of like online hubs where the teachers don't necessarily have to be in the room. They could be in another room and still doing it, and we can have people on the shift. So students will have Wi-Fi in the building, but I do recognize some of the schools, even with Wi-Fi, is not up to par. So we have not adapted. We're not equipped. That's the problem. But one of the things I think we should have a campaign, at least in some of the large urban areas, we should go to our governmental leaders and say, we want free Wi-Fi for the whole city. It is a good economic base, not only for kids, but it's good for the whole city. And so I would say we need to reimagine and stop being copycats. Everybody's doing the same kind of model in terms of how they're going to deliver instruction. It doesn't mean, we never asked the teachers, how many of the teachers actually want to come back? It might be some teachers who do want to come back in the building and deliver instruction. I think I would have started there first, and then I would have tried to reduce density. I might have had 3 or 4 different shifts. Some kids are still trying to work. Maybe I have 4 shifts, 4 hours, that is over 12 hours. And students can come different times, but that's their block of time. They get instruction. We got physical distancing. We don't have everybody there, and they still can do online. But we got to reimagine, because we could be at this for a whole year, and we're gonna wipe out a whole generation of young people in some of our urban centers. And to me, that's malpractice at a very high level. So I'll stop there.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. Dr. Tyson?
Yes, everything he said. It made me also think about just thinking outside the box. I read that there's a school district in Charleston, for an example, that has decided to team with PBS to broadcast lessons, teacher interactions, and provide support also to parents. So even though everyone may not have internet in their home or cable, they do have a television. The 21st century, it's hard to walk in some place where someone doesn't have a television. And even if they don't have cable, they can have access to the PBS channel 24, 28, whatever is broadcasting. And so my thought was, why aren't we figuring out how to use some of this airspace to be able to broadcast into the homes at different intervals throughout the day, education that's developmentally appropriate. So for our pre-K kiddos, we'd have a certain amount of time where they would do their work. We would have some work for those, grade K through 3, 3 through 5, so that they would be able to not only access their lessons, but also be able to access some support. Now, yes, it's unidirectional, but at least that would get around being behind the 8 ball around the technology piece. I read also, for an example, in LA, and they put hotspots, very high-powered hotspots on school buses and drove them into neighborhoods. And those school bus drivers were able to maintain their work, and then people in neighborhoods were able to access the hotspot. And so I tried it out. I even went outside my house with my computer to see how far away from my house can I pick up my hotspot. And believe me, 3 or 4 houses down the street, I can still pick up my hotspot, which led me to believe, well, maybe that's something that as a community, if people do have internet and do have access, create ways so that folks in the community can get close enough so that they'd be able to sign in. How many of you have ever tried to join and you pick up your neighbors next door and the one over here and over there? So we could, as a community, respond in that way. These are resources that don't need allocation of money right now, because we know we got the CARES money, but we got to wait till that comes in. The television stations are there. The radio is another. We've got radio stations that broadcast 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So as Dr. Moore mentioned, having accessibility at different times of the day. So that to me would be one of the major responses, because then that way we could have PE teachers leading our kids in movement. We could have art teachers helping our kids do some of the creative stuff. We can have our reading teachers, you know, all of those things happening at different times. I believe that the major response has to be the will to want to do it. Because if my children are not suffering, very often it's hard to move those in those spaces to think that it's an issue and that it's a problem. If my house is on fire and no one is there to put the fire out and we are right next door to each other, your house is going to burn down soon. It's not if, it's when. And so for me, helping everyone understand that if we're going to throw these mantras out there, we're all in this together, then let's get busy about being in it together and responding together.
Thank you, Dr. Tyson. Dr. Jackson.
I'm old enough that I remember during the blizzard that we did school on the TV. So we had to turn on the TV to get our schoolwork. And so I do remember that. And I think that's an awesome idea. I mean, we've got to give them access and they don't have it. My thoughts are, we have a lot of training time coming up to prepare teachers to deliver instruction. I would love to see anti-racist education be a part of that training, to actually develop real understanding of who it is we serve, and to honor their value and what they bring to the table and their different ways of learning. Looking through the mathematical lens, as I tend to do, because those abstract concepts are difficult for our students. We need to look at how they learn, and not that it fits into what you want to do for how they learn, but to genuinely teach them the way that they learn, and to make that meaning and let them make that meaning. Working with students who need a lot of times conversation, they need discussion, they need to make meaning for themselves through that discussion. I would like to see part of that anti-racist education include things like that. How do I allow students to discuss what they need to discuss and to make that meaning without feeling like I have to control the conversation? If I'm the teacher, I already have a good understanding of the content. I need them to have that good understanding and be able to apply that content learning, no matter what it looks like. If we're testing somehow, you know, how do they apply that to that test? But I would like to see that education be provided for teachers so that they have a better understanding, a better grasp of who it is they work with, and to help our students grow even in this new environment.
Thank you so much. Principal Warfield.
I would like to, also just kind of piggyback a little bit after what Dr. Jackson just said. And not only just this idea of anti-racist training, but not the one-off. And I think right now we are in such an interesting time now where everybody's trying to check a box. So did we get the title stuff done? Did we do the anti-racism speaker that came in and talked one time? Did everybody read the book? All right, we all read it this summer and then never go back to it. I think that right now we are in, I would say this is just not just in Columbus, this is across the country. We're talking about people trying to check boxes right now. And if this professional development, if this is not a part of the lens and what you do long-term, and this is not what we are continuing to do, then it's never going to take effect. So this anti-racist training, it must be ongoing. It must be a part of the conversation constantly, because those are the lenses that the world really is in. And for us to continue to try to pretend like this is not the world we live in is absolutely ridiculous. And it's insulting to our students, and it should be actually insulting to us as educators, that they think that we can just do this one time or bring this person in and then we're done and we've had enough training and we're going to be successful in the one time we do that. So one thing I will say that it has to be an ongoing focus. And I would also like to talk just about the engagement piece. I think for us, and when I started thinking about teaching and learning, what this has to look like to have our kids be successful, I think the time of us pulling that lesson out of the drawer, because this is what we used to do in September, is over. We have to be able to find a way to engage our students in the things that they are interested in. And the world is providing those opportunities for us and in bunches for us to use the things that are happening to be able to hit those standards and be able to do those things that we claim don't allow us to maneuver and don't allow us to do the fun things that we do after testing. Those things, we can do all of those things now. So engaging our students in real life topics and real world experience. And I think those are the things that are going to help us be successful during this time. If we think we're still going to be able to pull out that drawer, what we did on September 30, whatever, that is not going to be successful. We're going to struggle again.
Dr. Ford, if I could just interject one thing that I think is very important. We can transform schools overnight if we get out of the way. And what I would say about that, you remember when MOOCs were really big, that was going to be the new quintessential delivery of instruction in higher education. Literally, people said one professor can teach millions of people, right? The concept, we can bring, school districts should have had with Zoom, and we do it at the university. And in fact, I would say we're probably more agile, more close than we ever been because of the pandemic. We should have resource groups that all the people who teach calculus together. You mean the best calculus teachers I'm not picking on Columbus, but I'm just going to use Columbus as an example. You can't come together to put the best course together for students to learn calculus. I mean, you don't really need multiple teachers to teach it. You just need a platform to teach it. And the other teachers can provide more support and do recitations, the term that we typically use in university, where we can have small groups and we can do that more, that when students need a little bit more than what we do. If we had stations, if we go back to home, a school system that we don't have to drive all the way across town to go to school, they literally can walk to the next school. It doesn't matter what school, whether they go to that school or not. There's a station there waiting for you, a computer where you can do it. You can print out and you can do things. And it's physically distancing, where students can come, they can eat a lunch, right? We can save money. We not only save money, it could possibly be more efficient, but you got to bring the right people in the mind, and we can't be wedded to the same thing, because if we keep being wedded to the same thing, we're going to keep getting the same outcomes. I want to hear, as a result of the pandemic, that we're doing something that we never thought we would do before, and we're better at it. I mean, resource groups, the best teachers who teach math at elementary school, perhaps that's a module. The best people who teach language arts is a module. And guess what? Once we create one module, we can proliferate it throughout the school district. And then we have part of the team of the teachers is retooling it. These students need a little bit different. And we just populating the module that we can do. I know it sounds very simplistic, but that's how my mind is that I kind of take big, hard concepts and try to squeeze it together. But you can't have everybody thinking, and you need to have an outlier in the group who don't think like everybody else to say, that ain't gonna work because. And then you keep refining it. But guess what? We're behind the 8 ball now. Schools are getting ready to start. We wasted months. And it's not just K-12, higher education wasted months. The faculty weren't. What I hear from my students of color, Dr. Ford, some of them, we opened up at OSU a pass-fail option. Some of the students opted for pass-fail, not because they necessarily wanted to do pass-fail, because the resources didn't go online just like the instruction went online. We didn't adapt to the students. We wanted the students to adapt to us. So I'll stop there.
Wow, there's just so much, a great deal of information. And again, not just talking about what the problems are, and they're overwhelming, and just so many, but also
Dr. I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to, I hate to interrupt you because I'm gonna have to jump off here, but I also wanted you to say this last thing before I have to go, and we're gonna do Q&A another time, and hopefully I'll get to join in. But I think that we also need to work on empowering our parents and caregivers that they can do this. You know, I remember back in the day complaining about not having resources in my classroom when I was teaching first grade, and my grandmother telling me, I don't know why you're complaining, because we used to teach each other how to read, drawing letters in the dirt with a stick. So how can you not do it with all that you have? And I think that that's one of the things, because the parents are our kids' first teachers. They want what's best for them, even though they may not know exactly how to make that happen. And so really empowering them to say, yeah, the kids are at home with you. You can do this. We want to help you do it. We can do this together. We can't teach your kids without you. You know, we got all these challenges, but I think there's also a group of parents out there that just really need somebody to come alongside to say, you know what, I'm with you in this. I got you. I can help you be able to do what you need to do at home while I'm on the other side of this fence trying to do what happens in school. So I just wanted to throw that out there as well, that empowerment, not only for our classroom teachers and administrators, but also for those folks who are parents and caregivers at home. And with that, I say thank you. And I really hate that I have to leave, but it's been a pleasure.
Thanks for being a panelist, and it would not have been so wonderful with you being absent.
Right.
So have a great meeting, and we'll talk to you again. All right. So we're about to open this up for a question and answer, but I just want to say two things. One is I know we talk a lot about poverty, and I opened it up by saying that's one of the 3 pandemics, but I also want to say that those of us who are, for example, Black and very successful, we still may not have wealth and the opportunities that whites have accrued over time. So for example, as I'm sitting here, my son owns his own business, and I've been watching my grandson, who is here right now, for 3 days, because without me, he couldn't go to work. And he is, doing pretty well. So I want to make sure it's clear that this is not just an issue of poverty. It is an issue of poverty, but we also have to look at it through the lens of Blacks, for example, not having the same wealth and resources and privilege, etc., as the much higher income whites. The last I want to say, and then we'll open up for questions, is the message from all the panelists has been stop the damn excuses. Stop the damn excuses. This is not impossible. And we have to think outside the box, be creative, be empathetic, be equity minded, and we can get a better handle on helping those who are the most disadvantaged. I always have been, even before COVID-19, but even more so during this particular pandemic. So let's not lose sight of that. And yes, as Dr. Tyson said, we need to do a better job of working with our families so that they can better assist their children. So with that said, we have done pretty well. Let's open it up for Q&A. So Glenn, Sweeney, or Holly?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was gonna. This is Kip Holly, and we had a lot of good questions in the Q&A. And I guess I'll just start at the top. One person was asking if the panelists could speak to the wave of sort of organizations and government entities that are declaring racism as a public health crisis and its impact on structurally embedded inequities in education.
Okay, so for me, you're fading in and out a little bit, but the question was about anti-racism and...
Yeah, it was declaring racism as a public health crisis.
Oh, it definitely is. And there was some kind of declaration, I don't know if that's the official term, that came out regarding Columbus and how it was and the police force have been very racist as legally and as a city. So yeah, it's a public health issue, definitely. I don't know if anyone wants to quickly speak on that, but all I can just say is absolutely, we're in a pandemic.
Well, I would say, I think Columbus kind of put out the clarion call first, and now other cities are following. It's good that they put out that declaration, but I always knew it was a public health crisis. But I guess that the issue that we all been confronted with, now that we know that it's a public health crisis, now what? So what? Now what are we gonna do? And I think that's what Principal Warfield is saying. The burden is on us now. Now that we know, now we woke. Now what are we gonna do about it to sanitize or to eradicate racism? And I think that's the burden. First and foremost, my perspective on racism, and I like to think of myself as a child of the South. Racism is not foreign, and I see the South crumbling at its very root when I see things and images and breaking down. But what I will say, we probably won't transform the staunch racist who's wedded to their racist ideals and perspectives. I would say, from my perspective, I'm concerned about the people who go around saying anti-racism, who go around saying multiculturalism, because I don't necessarily see the behaviors always match what they say. I think when we match what we say with our behaviors, I think we got a better chance to eradicate racism. And that's just my perspective, being a counselor by training. We look at behaviors. The mouth can say anything, but your actions speak louder than what your mouth says.
And I wanted to say that, go ahead, Principal Warfield.
I'd like to just, Dr. Moore, I'm going to say I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think right now we are in a anti-racism woke fad that can easily right now. This is the trendy thing to do right now. The question is just, what's the plan for us to continue to do this and for this to be long lasting? I think, and then you will go back to what you just said about the actions. And we can talk about it. We can read all the anti-racist books. We can pick up these different things and read articles and share things on Twitter. But what are we actually going to do to get to the root cause? And what are we going to actually do? Are we going to stay in these streets? Are we going to continue to have these conversations? Or in a couple months, or after this election is over, are we just going to go back to business as usual? And those are the things that I think about, and the things that I just continue to stay in the back of my mind of, this isn't a trend. I mean, for people of color, this isn't just something that can go away. And I think people right now are just kind of hopping in there, and eventually I think they're going to try to hop back out. But those are the things that genuinely concern me as we look at this. This is just the trendy thing to do, so we can try to post on Twitter and Facebook.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say based on your previous remarks too. Definitely, this must not be, anti-racism must not be a fad. But I also want to say this anti-racist training, this culture, and this is in higher education too, not just in P to 12. And this, or some people want to call it culturally responsive, but now I prefer anti-racist. And then major focus on stop being anti-Black. By the way, that's a whole nother webinar, to anti-Black. But we got to be mindful of who does the training. You know, it's like, oh, Dr. Ford, she might be too aggressive. No, I'm not being aggressive. I'm telling it just like it is. She's just too blunt. That's because it's a damn problem. But she might hurt people's feelings. Well, I believe in the pedagogy of discomfort. No damn pain, no gain. Now I'm getting worked up. All right, so let me calm down. But no pain, no gain. Don't come in here with this lukewarm BS. Don't come in here with these activities, like it's supposed to be a diversity training, and you want to do some kind of tic-tac-toe where you want to talk about who traveled the farthest and who, lives where. Stop that shit. That's not diversity training. It just infuriates me if you can't see that right now. Have serious anti-racist trainers who are bold, unapologetic, direct, and as we said in this webinar, in this Zoom session, who offer solutions and have them. And so stop pretending like we don't have the answers, because many have been given here. Stop the excuses. All right, next question. I'm sorry. That from the Q&A.
Yeah, that was a good answer. There were a couple questions that I'm going to kind of wrap into one question. One was about somebody wanting to know your suggestions about organizations that are doing good advocacy work around these issues that we could support. And someone else asked, how do we get someone in those decision-making spaces to advocate for what's needed unapologetically? So I guess those are like, who's doing that kind of advocacy work and how can we support them? And then what else can we do to get more decision makers in the room that are talking like this?
Well, first and foremost, you got D.Y. Ford here, because she bridle her tongue. She from East Cleveland, but we need more. It's unfortunate that Dr. Ford has taken on. I've seen literally organizations, but it's a lot of compassion fatigue, and we got to understand we'll watch people take on organizations while we just remain silent. And one of the things I've seen, particularly in my work and space, we see people doing things that is absolutely wrong, is debilitating to so many people, is causing so much trauma, and we won't do anything. And what's so painful, I've never watched in its entirety the situation in Minnesota. I refuse to watch it. I refuse to just get mad. I've been upset since Emmett Till, and I wasn't even born then. So these are the kind of narratives that were shared in my household that it really created a vocation for me, a pathway, a mission that I wanted to try to right some of those wrongs, because I don't need to see another person die senseless to be motivated. I don't need to be able to read another book to be aware that so many people are hurting, and it reflects pain at a very high level. And I recognize when I meet people who do speak out, they may not use the same methodology, they may not use the same language that I do. Everybody act to these things so differently. And the reality of it is, I believe education is a vessel for transformation, but it's debilitating for some communities. It tells you assign a status, a permanent status, and it's impenetrable. When we look at our schools, when we let school systems decide we're going to offer AP within the same school system. When we talk about equity, I don't need to talk about the suburbs. I see it in the urban center, how we give one side of town because they got parents who got resources and opportunities and influence and PhDs and JDs. And then we'll watch another side of town like East Side or the West Side in certain pockets, how there are ruins, and you have to almost be so resilient, and you got to be grit, and we got to celebrate them because they overcome so many odds. The educational system should be a pathway for transformation, and not only a transformation, a pathway for opportunities. And too often in our school systems, we're not seeing that. And we used to say that we don't have quality teachers. This pandemic with online, there's no more excuses that students shouldn't have access to quality teachers. Heck, if we got to go to the suburb, if you're telling me that person is the best person to teach calculus, which I don't believe that, they just don't have necessarily the same obstacles as us other students. That equity thing, we should be able to fix that in terms of who is in front of the kids in the delivery of the instruction through this Zoom, WebCT, Blue Gene, whatever the platform that you use. I think what it is that I would say that I'm hopeful in this anti-racism movement is resolve. The refusal to say that we're going to continue to let generations of people, whether in the urban center or the rural center, fall to the wayside, fall to the ruins. as my mother would say to me, and I believe this is a core philosophy in my behaviors, great minds come from every zip code.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Your zip code is not your destiny. I'm sorry I had to interrupt you on that. Your zip code is not your destiny. And as Dr. Moore said, I come from Cleveland and East Cleveland, Ohio, and look where I am now. This deficit thinking, these low expectations, they compromise in so many negative ways the opportunities of our students. As Dr. Moore was saying, and I have a master's in counseling, so we share that and we write about, you know, social emotional needs and racial identity, et cetera, together. We have pieces coming out right now. But I was thinking about, and I know we need to ask another question and take another question, but I was thinking about, and I wrote a little bit about this. You know, we have this notion of post-traumatic stress disorder. And for me, post means it, you know, in the past. Right now, I'm serious. I'm not trying to be facetious. I'm not trying to be sarcastic, but what we damn have here is present traumatic stress disorder. This is what's going on now. And this goes back to what Dr. Moore said in terms of, for example, compassion fatigue or racial battle fatigue and more. We are tired of being tired, but educators who are culturally competent and anti-racist can change this in many ways. Plus, we need more Black, Hispanic, and Native American educators. And I'm gonna say, you know, principals, not just teachers. And we need counselors. I bet if we did a survey, let me just say this. I bet if we did a survey of school counselors throughout the nation, in Columbus, in Whitehall, wherever, if you said racial identity, they wouldn't know a damn thing about it. If you asked them to go through the stages of racial identity for individual groups, you know, Blacks, Hispanics, multiracial, et cetera, they will likely be clueless. Now, if they come out of my class. So we don't even, it's not just about, for example, social and emotional needs. This is about racialized social and emotional needs. It cannot be color blind. And this is why we need culturally competent professionals. Let me see what the next question is. And Dr. Jackson, I'm sorry I haven't, asked you to respond, but let's see what the next question is, please.
Yeah, kind of going along what you were just talking about. Someone asked, can anyone speak about the ideals of how disenfranchised students can be seen and feel like they belong when they're stuck using lesser quality tech? And another person asked, a couple of other people have asked about, you know, how can we make this trauma of racialized education and the pandemic part of our curriculum? Like, how can sort of teachers make this either a teaching moment or learning moment or a moment of people coming together and really being seen in that way?
Well, I don't want to monopolize, but two things come to mind. And one is multicultural curriculum. I use James Banks's 4 levels of how to infuse multicultural content into the curriculum. James Banks's 4 levels, BANKS, of how to infuse multicultural content into the curriculum. And we must get at the 2 highest levels. We must get beyond contributions. We must get beyond additive. We must get to transformation, and we must get to social action / social justice. And then I've taken that model and his 4 levels and blended it with Bloom's taxonomy, you know, those 6 levels. And I've created a rigor and relevant matrix. It's called the Bloom-Banks matrix. And so educators, there are no excuses. There are models And those two, Mind and Banks, tell you unequivocally how to infuse multicultural content into the curriculum. Then I want to say this, and please, I want you to say something, Dr. Jackson. Right after this, in 45 minutes, meaning 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, I am a co-host of Black Minds Matter. Not Black Lives Matter, okay, but Black Minds Matter. And it's been 5 courses and classes, and the last one is today. You can still sign up for this one at 1 o'clock. And if you go back and review all the other 4 classes, you can get CEUs. There is a syllabus, an extensive syllabus for multicultural, I'm just gonna say resources. And the theme for this year with Dr. J. Luke Wood, the founder, creator of Black Minds Matter, is the school to prison pipeline. And so you will have, there's an extensive focus, I'm almost done, on the how special education, which ain't a damn thing special in many places about special ed, all right, but special education, gifted education, don't get me started on that. Don't get me started on gifted education and advanced placement. And then discipline. Our children are criminalized damn near from birth, convicted in the womb, as Upchurch said, and in his book. So you will get a lot of speakers. And what's really phenomenal is one of the speakers today. But I want to say this, at the end of each session, you will hear from one of the relatives of a Black male who has been killed, murdered is the actual word, by the police. So it starts with all these speakers, and then it ends with these families telling you about their experiences, and et cetera. And that includes, we asked them, what were their school experiences like? You've got to sign on Black Minds Matter. 1 o'clock today, Eastern Standard Time. Dr. Jackson, I'm sorry, I did not leave much time for you. And do you want to, anything you want to say, please?
Please don't apologize. I'm learning so much and I'm loving this. I think one point I want to make is a statement was made about my school district that our children need to see more people who look like them. Whether that's teachers, admins, counselors, they need to see more people who look like them, and not just a surface thing. The pushback to that statement was incredible. And I don't think when we talk about checking a box, I don't think that will ever be enough, because it's internalized that folks that look like me aren't always what's best for our kids. And I disagree. Not that other teachers don't do good things with our kids, but you can't take away the value of a teacher of color and the connection that they have. I believe that I sat on a committee, a math textbook committee, and we just had a very expensive adoption of reading and math in our district. And when I sat in the training last week, I was offended, because I'm like, I wasted my time. I still don't see the relevance to our students in these books. We spent a lot of money, and our kids won't find themselves in these stories, in these math problems. You can't talk to students in Columbus City Schools about a speeding train in Japan that they have no conceptual relevance to. And I told you this over the course of a year as you were writing this text. I told you repeatedly what would matter and what's relevant to my kids or to our students, and it didn't matter to you. So that sat with me as I sat through the training, and I gave that pushback like you wasted my time, and who my students are doesn't matter to you and to your company. You're going to give them what you feel they need without taking into consideration who they are. So I definitely agree with what you all have said about that anti-racist education or that training. It goes beyond the classroom teacher and it spreads out. It needs to fan out, and people need to be held accountable, and we need to have those uncomfortable conversations about our kids. You're talking about my kids. You need to listen to what I'm telling you. You need to value what I'm saying and value my kids and show that you value our students when you offer these things to us and you make these decisions about our kids. So I'm sorry. When I heard those things, I got excited, like, yeah, and I tried to tell them that kind of thing doesn't matter. That's not relevant to the students that I work with. It's not relevant to me. I don't care about a speeding train in Japan. Talk to me about what my kids will encounter and how to solve those problems. Because while I would love for them all to see the world, chances are they're not going to Japan in droves to ride that speeding train. Let's talk about what's relevant for our kids right now.
Donna probably never left Columbus. The first time I flew on a plane, I was 18 years of age, but I got to stop. 18. And if there was a question, there is a question on an intelligence test, it talks about flying on a plane. I wouldn't have had that experience if I had been in the 5th grade. 18 years of age. And that's the first time we had a car too, by the way. First time we had a car. Okay.
Well, I hate to jump in, but our time is up. And I just want to say, wow, this has been such a phenomenal panel. I'm so grateful. And thank you, Drs. Ford, Jackson, Moore, Tyson, and Principal Warfield for sharing your knowledge and experience with us and our audience. And thank you to the audience for joining us today for this exciting forum. Due to the number of questions that are continuing to come in, the panelists have agreed to host a separate Q&A session to answer the remaining questions and any additional questions that people think of. So information about that session will be sent to all attendees. But also please be sure to look out for information on our next forum soon. And thank you all for joining.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Hey, Glennon, are
Yes.
we in another forum right now? Or I gotta.
No, we're done. We're good.
Okay.
I'm gonna send an email for the Q&A follow-up. Yeah.
Okay.
You guys are all
Thank
happy.
you for having me. I'm
Oh,
sorry
thank
about
you.
the other day. That was fire. I had a blast. Thank you.
Yeah, this was my favorite panel. This has been great. So thank you so much. This has really been phenomenal.
Dr. Ford, I gotta meet that woman.
I was like, wait, can you say that again so I can tweet that?
I was like, go ahead. I was like, East Cleveland. There you go.
Yeah.
I gotta meet that one.
Yeah.
Down.
Phenomenal. Yep.
Thank you guys.
Yep. Thank you, folks.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, everyone.
Hey, Lena and Kip, is there a way to save the questions?
Yeah, I think all of it gets saved like with the recording, doesn't it? Like in the texts.
I believe so.
Okay, and so then we can like send those to them ahead of time before the Q&A follow-up so they know what's on.
Yeah. And
Okay.
who recorded? Was that you, Lena? Who I think it's gonna come recorded it. I think.
Oh yeah, I pressed record only after Dr. Barnett reminded me. So
I know, I had forgotten about it too.
Yeah,
And
I didn't have the power to record, sorry. And I didn't even think about it, so.
No, I did. I think I did that last time. It's like I was like so into moderating that last panel that I forgot to hit record, and I think Kelly ended up hitting record last time. So we're all just kind of figuring it out.
Yeah, I might have had the ability to record. Sorry, I don't know. This is my first time, so I'm trying.
No, we did
you did great.
You did great. We did great. Thank you for getting me in.
Yeah.
I'm going to suggest to them next Thursday at 11 for the for the Q&A, because I think that makes sense, and see if that'll work. And if not, we'll look for other times. And I'll let you guys know, because I don't know if we can use the forum link or if we have to use something else for that.
Okay.
But you'll be on the email. So.
Yeah, I can look into it. I don't know that we can use the same link.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just because it's set up as a series for every other Thursday, so I'm not sure, and I'm bad at technology. So.
Yeah, well, clearly, like, I feel like we need like another Zoom training now that we had the one, so that we can ask the questions now that we've tried to do the things that we were taught to do.
Well, and so much of this is just kind of like learning as we go, right? Like, you know, this is like the third one, and I think, you know, there's always been like a lesson afterwards, and it's maddening because like I keep trying to like come up with like a structure for it. And like every time I'm like, well, I'm gonna have to, you know, we're gonna have to go back and look at that because like it's complete, you know, like that's not gonna work. So, you know, probably having another couple trainings would probably be a good idea.
Yeah,
just as we learn more too.
Thank you so much, guys. This was such a great. I was so happy with how this went. They were phenomenal.
Yeah, it was great. It was a great panel. Thank you for doing so much to put it together.
I wish I was better at organizing, but I think we got good people. So, hey, you know, I'm really proud of, you know, how they did. I think it went great for Kirwan and for them. So, all right. Well, thank you guys.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go get lunch before my next meeting.
Go ahead and end the meeting for everyone then.
All right.
Okay. Thanks. Bye-bye.
See you later. Bye.